Imagine a world where virtue and diligence are rewarded accordingly, where success accompanies the honest and hardworking. Sounds like a fair setup, doesn't it? But is one look around enough to convince you that those at the top are not the most virtuous, but those who don't mind stepping over others? Not those who follow moral principles, but those who skillfully manipulate the rules to their advantage? The bitter truth is that society often offers only an illusion of fairness. From childhood, we are taught to believe that good always triumphs, that honest labor inevitably leads to success, and that justice is the cornerstone of the universe. However, there was a thinker who saw the world in a completely different, much darker and more unsightly light. For him, morality was merely a tool of control, a fiction designed to keep the weak in check, while the true masters of life take from it whatever they want. That is why it is so often observed that manipulators thrive, unscrupulous leaders hold high positions in politics, exploitative companies monopolize markets, and egoists climb the career ladder, while the naive remain far behind. The game was never about merit. It was always about power. And this power belongs to those who realize it earlier than others. The philosopher called it the will to power, the very primal force that separates those who command from those who obey. But what is this force, and how can it be acquired? The answer to this question may change your perception of the world and your place in it. Stay with us to learn more about this concept that can turn your life upside down. However, the vast majority of people continue to be held captive by illusions, preferring to lull themselves with pleasant lies about the inevitable triumph of justice. Do you share this naive belief, or are you ready to face the naked reality? After learning about the information presented, your perception of the world will never be the same. From the moment you were born, you were convinced that the world is ruled by justice, that hard work, virtue, and honesty are the sure path to success. But is it worth blindly trusting these claims? Do they really reflect the true picture of the world? Who is at the top of the social pyramid? The most hardworking or the most cunning? The most just or those who do not disdain manipulation and deception? Modern society is based on a foundation of convenient lies, on the illusion of meritocracy. We are instilled with a simple concept. Those who strictly follow the rules, work honestly, and do the right thing will ultimately be handsomely rewarded. However, the philosopher Nietzsche viewed this belief as a skillful illusion designed to keep the weak in obedience and the strong in power. The truth is that history is written not by the most just, but by the most ruthless. It is they, unburdened by moral principles, who shape the course of events and determine the fates of peoples. Looking at the greatest empires that have ever existed on Earth, it becomes obvious that the path to the top is rarely lined with virtue. The Roman Empire, which left an indelible mark on history, expanded its possessions not through justice, but through conquest. It ruthlessly wiped entire civilizations off the face of the earth, enslaved peoples, and crushed all resistance to its hegemony. The United States of America, in turn, achieved superpower status not through ethical principles. Their rise to world domination was built on wars, the exploitation of resources, and the establishment of economic dominance. In the corporate world, the picture is similar. Industrial giants such as Amazon, Google, and Apple climbed to the top, by no means guided by charity. They grew by eliminating competitors, manipulating markets, and putting expansion above any moral considerations. It is terrifying to realize that this system is not an accident or a failure. It is initially designed to function in this way. As the French philosopher Michel Foucault astutely noted, power by its nature is never distributed fairly. It steadily accumulates, concentrates in the hands of a few, and is jealously guarded by those who already possess it. The idea of a just world, where success is the result of kindness and hard work, is just a convenient narrative designed to keep the masses in obedience. This is an effective way to prevent rebellion against those who actually run the game. Friedrich Nietzsche made a radical revolution in moral philosophy, arguing that generally accepted virtues, such as humility, self-sacrifice, and obedience, are not universal ethical principles. In his opinion, this is a carefully constructed tool created by the weak to curb the potential of strong personalities. Nietzsche dubbed this phenomenon slave morality, a system of values that exalts submission and vehemently condemns the pursuit of power. People raised in the spirit of slave morality tend to consider ambition a vice, the pursuit of greatness a manifestation of pride, and any resistance to the established order an immoral act. However, according to Nietzsche, this way of thinking only serves to preserve the power of those who already possess it. At the same time, those who reject slave morality and adhere to master morality are often seen by society as cruel, arrogant, and dangerous. But it is these people who recognize no limitations who, according to the philosopher, make history. They do not need anyone's permission, but boldly impose their will on the world around them. They create their own rules instead of blindly following the dictates of others. They do not wait for favors from fate, but take from life all that they desire. This is why it is often observed that worthy people find themselves in difficult situations, while the most unscrupulous individuals occupy leading positions in society. This happens because while some adhere to established norms and rules, others ignore or circumvent them. While some wait for deserved recognition, others actively assert themselves and impose their will. While some express dissatisfaction with injustice, others profit from it. A legitimate question arises. Will you continue to believe in what you were taught as a child, or will you dare to face the truth, however bitter it may be? If we single out the key concept that permeates Nietzsche's entire philosophy, it is undoubtedly the will to power. In his view, all aspects of life, from biological processes to political intrigues, from personal aspirations to large-scale social structures, are subject to a single, fundamental force: the desire for domination, expansion of influence, and the assertion of one's will in the world. A common misconception in modern society is the belief that people strive for happiness, peace, and harmony. However, Nietzsche considered this nothing more than a convenient lie masking true motives. In his opinion, the true engine of human actions is not the pursuit of comfort, but the thirst for ascent. Every form of life strives for growth, conquest, and the assertion of its superiority over others. In the wild, a lion asserting its dominance through killing; in the business world, a CEO destroying competitors for the sake of corporate growth; in the world of politics, a figure resorting to manipulation to maintain power. All demonstrate the same phenomenon: undisguised force, the pursuit of power. However, there is a nuance that determines the difference between triumphant and unsuccessful individuals. For most people, this natural impulse is suppressed from an early age. From childhood, they are taught to curb their desires, show modesty, and respect the boundaries set by others. They are taught to believe that striving for more is reprehensible, that the thirst for power is dangerous, and that ambition is synonymous with greed. At the same time, those who understand the true nature of things not only recognize this impulse, but actively develop it. Friedrich Nietzsche argued that the great conquerors in history, innovative artists, and outstanding leaders were distinguished by the fact that they were not afraid of their own will to power. They did not need permission, did not obey rules imposed by slave morality, and did not cling to abstract concepts such as justice or kindness if they became an obstacle to the realization of their potential. All of the above leads to the realization of a key aspect of human existence. Power is not a gift from above, not a trophy awarded for diligence, and not an encouragement for compliance with established norms. Power is something that must be seized, taken by force. The history of mankind testifies that the laurels of victors went not to those who patiently awaited recognition of their merits, but to those who boldly asserted themselves, imposing their will on the world around them. Consider Alexander the Great, who did not ask permission to conquer entire empires. Napoleon Bonaparte did not wait to be presented with the imperial throne; he seized it himself. Steve Jobs did not seek approval when he decided to radically change the face of the technology industry. He simply ignored criticism and brought his daring ideas to life. The fundamental difference between those who govern and those who obey is this: The former realize that the world belongs to those who are not afraid to impose their will, while the latter continue to believe in the illusion of a fair system that will sooner or later reward them for exemplary behavior. This pattern is evident everywhere. In the workplace, it's often observed that the most dedicated employee is overlooked for promotions, while their more assertive colleague, skilled at self-promotion, unafraid to take charge, and adept at manipulating the rules, rapidly climbs the corporate ladder. In the business world, corporations that operate aggressively, strategically, and even manipulatively dominate markets, while companies that insist on fair play are buried under the onslaught of competitors. Friedrich Nietzsche viewed this not as a flaw in the existing order, but as an inherent characteristic. The world was not created fair. It is more like an arena for struggle, where only individuals who recognize and realize their will to power can shape the surrounding reality according to their needs. And here's the truth that few dare to accept. If a person does not assert their own will in the world, someone else inevitably will. If they do not establish their own values, values will be imposed upon them. If they do not play to win, they become merely a tool in someone else's game. The morality instilled by the social system often keeps most people in a state of mediocrity. From an early age, they are taught modesty, conflict avoidance, prioritizing the interests of others, and adhering to established rules. They are led to believe that virtue is the path to success, that ethical and benevolent behavior will inevitably be rewarded. However, Nietzsche debunked this deception. He realized that traditional morality is not a universal truth, but a control mechanism designed to keep the weak in subjugation and the strong in check. It's worth considering. Who defined the rules by which ambition is considered a vice? Who decided that striving for more is selfishness? Who instilled the idea that the pursuit of power is something evil? The answer is obvious. Those who are already at the top. Society is dominated by a morality that Friedrich Nietzsche called slave morality. This value system elevates submissiveness, obedience, and disregard for personal interests. It instills that peacefulness is the highest virtue. Uncomplainingly accepting the blows of fate is a sign of strong character, and renouncing the pursuit of power is evidence of spiritual maturity. But who actually benefits from this morality? Clearly, not those who follow its precepts. The harsh truth is that it was invented by the weak to protect themselves from the strong. Those without power fear those who possess it, and therefore create myths that demonize anyone who strives for elevation. Religious leaders have for centuries preached humility as a virtue, sacrifice as nobility, and the silent acceptance of suffering as the path to a worthy fate. At the same time, they themselves wallow in luxury and control millions of minds. Governments talk about justice and equality, but are the first to manipulate laws to stay in power. In contrast to this mindset, Nietzsche put forward master morality, the morality of the strong, those who create the world, those who are not afraid to follow their desires. For adherents of this morality, ambition is not something to suppress, but a powerful engine. The desire for growth and domination is not a shameful passion, but the very essence of life. They live not to please others, but to expand their own power and influence. The history of humanity is full of examples of individuals whose names are forever etched in the annals, thanks to their daring desire to change the world. A natural question arises. Were these people who obediently followed established social norms, or were they those who possessed enough courage to challenge the existing order? Recall Julius Caesar, who did not recognize the restrictions imposed by the Roman Senate, and, crushing them, established his dictatorship. Or Napoleon, who did not resign himself to the fate of a simple army officer, but managed to seize power and redraw the political map of Europe. One cannot fail to mention Steve Jobs, who refused to accept existing technological standards, imposing his own vision on the world and revolutionizing an entire industry. The paradox is that, being born into a prevailing morality, a person often does not realize how much it limits their opportunities. They feel guilty for striving for more, consider it reprehensible to desire power, and fear being seen as arrogant for striving to stand out, because they have learned from childhood that a good person should belittle themselves, obey, and be content with little. However, as Nietzsche argued, such a worldview is nothing more than a disease. The philosopher urged people to strive to unlock their maximum potential, cast off the shackles of oppressive morality, and embrace their true essence. One of the main obstacles to power, according to Nietzsche, is the inability of most people to control their emotions. By acting impulsively, reacting instinctively to provocations, and clinging to naive ideas about what the world should be, they show weakness. True rulers, those who have succeeded in the game of power, first and foremost know how to control themselves, and only then strive for control over the world around them. The history of mankind shows that the most influential figures were often distinguished not by impeccable justice or outstanding intelligence, but by strategic thinking. While many waste energy on fruitless attempts to convince others of their rightness, true triumphalists prefer to observe, carefully analyze the situation, and act only when the most favorable opportunity arises. Often, people mistakenly take impulsiveness for a manifestation of strength. It is widely believed that a strong person should immediately react to any aggression, respond to every provocation, and enter into every battle. However, it is precisely such behavior that is characteristic of the weak. Skilled strategists approach the choice of battles with exceptional prudence, realizing that every action must be dictated by a specific goal, and that dissipating energy on meaningless conflicts is tantamount to self-sabotage. Friedrich Nietzsche deeply understood that power is concentrated in the hands of those who skillfully manipulate human psychology. The behavior of most people is predictable. They respond with anger to anger, fear to fear, and under pressure, they fall into despair. Those who have perfectly mastered the art of power act differently. They turn patience into a powerful weapon, calmness into a reliable shield, and silence into an effective instrument of control. In the historical chronicles of Julius Caesar's reign, one can see a vivid example of how the skillful use of power can lead to the strengthening of personal influence. Caesar realized that his political future directly depended on the support of the people, and therefore each of his military achievements became an instrument for creating the image of an invincible leader. He did not waste time on fruitless debates or justifications for his decisions, preferring that his triumphs speak for themselves. When political opponents tried to undermine by his authority, Caesar did not succumb to an instant reaction. He patiently waited, strengthened his positions, formed alliances, and having waited for the right moment, decisively eliminated his enemies. Similar principles apply in the modern business world. The most successful company leaders are not those who exhaust themselves with work, but those who possess strategic thinking, know how to assess the situation, and choose the optimal moment for action. Influential people do not seek to outshout everyone, but prefer to observe and analyze before expressing their opinion. A common mistake made by many is that they waste energy proving their rightness. However, true strength lies not in convincing others of their power, but in the ability to make them feel it without saying unnecessary words. Friedrich Nietzsche saw this as a manifestation of personal mastery. He who is able to control his emotions gets the opportunity to control the reactions of others. Insensitivity to insults and provocations gives a huge advantage, as it allows you to turn the opponent's irritation into his vulnerability. This is one of the most important lessons in the art of power. He who remains calm in moments of general turmoil wins. While most people act on impulse, true masters wait, observe, and strike at the most opportune moment. Power, viewed only as an instrument of domination and strategic planning, could make ruthlessness the key to perpetual triumph. However, historical chronicles show that rising to the top often foreshadows an even more devastating fall. The qualities and methods that raise a leader to a pedestal often become the cause of his death. Friedrich Nietzsche saw in this an inexorable cycle, for those who do not know how to harmoniously combine power and wisdom. Take, for example, Julius Caesar. He conquered Rome thanks to his wit, strategic thinking, and ability to manipulate both allies and opponents. But the very Senate over which he exercised political dominion eventually turned against him. Caesar fell at the hands of conspirators, among whom were those who once supported him, including Brutus, a man whom he considered almost a son. His relentless cruelty and pursuit of absolute power created too many enemies, which ultimately led to his downfall. Napoleon Bonaparte followed a similar path. He conquered Europe with unprecedented speed and military genius, but his exorbitant ambitions clouded his mind, depriving him of the ability to stop in time. Invading Russia was a fatal mistake, as he disregarded all warnings about the dangers of the harsh winter and the stubborn resistance of the Russians. His insatiable thirst for new territories led to his downfall. He was exiled, humiliated, and died far from the glory he so desperately craved. And if anyone naively believes that such stories are a thing of the past, one need only look at the modern corporate world. There are numerous examples of business leaders who once built impressive empires, ultimately being buried under the rubble of their own creations. Consider, for example, Jeff Skilling of Enron, who, through skillful market manipulation, seemed untouchable. However, his audacious machinations could not remain in the shadows forever, and when the scandal reached its peak, Skilling deservedly ended up behind bars. Or Elizabeth Holmes, who, with her company Theranos, promised to revolutionize medicine. But her insatiable thirst for power and recognition pushed her down the path of falsifying results, which ultimately led to the collapse of her entire empire. The lesson to be learned from these stories is crystal clear. Ruthlessness without boundaries and restraints can destroy even the most powerful and influential. Friedrich Nietzsche, the great philosopher, warned in his writings that absolute power can blind a person, depriving them of the ability to see reality. When someone begins to believe in their own exceptionalism, that they are above all rules and laws, that their power is unshakable and no one can overthrow them, they cease to notice the risks and dangers lurking at every turn. They begin to make mistakes they would never have made before, underestimate their opponents, and create enemies without even realizing it. And when finally the realization of what has been done comes, it is often too late. But is there a way to avoid such a tragic ending? Yes, and the answer can also be found in Nietzsche. Balance. The true master of power is not only a strong and decisive person, but also a wise one. They understand that victory is only half the battle. The other half is knowing when to stop, consolidate gains, instead of continuing to expand endlessly without knowing limits or measure. They know when to ruthlessly destroy enemies and when to turn them into allies. Those who fail are those who mistakenly take strength for invincibility. Those who climb to the top and continue to rise higher and higher until finally the weight of their own arrogance brings them crashing down. It becomes obvious that reality is far from the idealized notions where triumph accompanies only benevolent natures. Power structures are not inclined to reward virtue. Their favor is earned by those who demonstrate strategic thinking, courage, and the ability to adapt to existing rules and, when necessary, initiate their revision. However, a legitimate question arises. Should one then disregard moral principles and transform into a ruthless despot to achieve personal ambitions? This approach is a dangerous trap that many fall into. Power has a devastating effect on those who perceive it solely as an instrument of aggression. Friedrich Nietzsche, for example, never advocated the idea of blind tyranny. He saw power as a means for self-realization and transformation, a way to forge one's own path, while avoiding enslavement to the thirst for profit or destructive inclinations. The true victor is not the one who simply seizes power, but the one who possesses the wisdom to maintain it. This implies the ability to find harmony between strategic planning and emotional intelligence, the ability to discern when to show ruthlessness and when to show calculated generosity, when to attack and when to retreat, when to suppress opponents and when to turn them into allies. Many people tend to fall into extremes, which defines their life path. Some naively believe that the world will surely reward them for their kindness and selfless work, allowing themselves to be exploited. Others, realizing the harsh truth about power, choose the path of destruction and paranoia, ultimately becoming victims of their own cruelty. However, there is also a third path, intended for those who have grasped the essence of the game but do not allow it to completely consume them. The truth is that you can continue to believe in justice while remaining just a pawn in someone else's game, but you can also accept reality, study the laws of power, and consciously decide how to use them to your advantage. If this perspective has made you rethink the world around you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts in the comments. Remember, power is not given. It must be taken. See you in the next issue.